From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin in Argentina, where festivities on Tuesday continued into the night, celebrating the official transition of power to the government of President Alberto Fernandez. There were scenes of revelry in Buenos Aires as thousands filled the historic Plaza de Mayo to mark the beginning of a new era. Many also expressed joy at the end of Mauricio Macri's time in power, a period that left the country dealing with runaway inflation, a colossal debt with the IMF, and over 40% of citizens living under the poverty line. Cristina Fernández de Kirchner took to the stage to deliver her first speech in her new role as vice president.
I want to tell you that I know that these past 4 years have been very hard for many people. Jobs, salaries, poverty, hunger. I know that these 4 years have been difficult. They were also difficult for those that were subject to persecution. They wanted us to literally disappear. They humiliated us. Nonetheless, in spite of all of that, we are here. And I want to tell you that we are here not because of magic, but because we have come together as millions that believe that a better country is possible.
Fernandez spoke after his the vice president, and paid tribute to her deceased husband, former President Néstor Kirchner.
It's a splendid night for me, in which Cristina and I can speak with you all about everything that's ahead of us and about what's to come. I thank God, because one day, destiny made my path cross with Néstor Kirchner's.
Me cruzó en el camino a Néstor Kirchner. Aquella noche.
That night, when I sat down for dinner with Néstor Kirchner, I never thought that my life would change the way it did. That the door would be open for me to be a protagonist with him. It's the biggest adventure that any politician can have, bringing their people out of disaster and onto their feet, raising the flag of workers, production, freedom, and democracy.
And as the festivities took place outside, inside the palace, the new president swore in his cabinet of ministers. They'll have the task of trying to restart the country's economy and deal with the problems of mounting hunger, unemployment, and falling production. Earlier in the day, Fernandez took the oath of office in the nation's Congress.
I, Alberto Ángel Fernández, swear by God, by my country, and on the Holy Gospel, to fulfill with loyalty and patriotism the role of President of the nation, and to obey, and have obeyed, the Constitution of Argentina. If I fail, may God and may country judge me.
After being sworn in, Fernandez received the presidential sash from the outgoing president and proceeded to sign the Act of Secession. In his inaugural address, he reminded people that December 10th was the anniversary of the end of a cruel dictatorship 37 years ago. He promised to put social justice at the center of a new Argentina. Colombians continue to mobilize against the government of Ivan Duque. Protests continue in Bogotá. Meanwhile, demands are being made to investigate the 777 killings of social leaders and human rights defenders. To mark Human Rights Day, Colombian rights groups have asked that the prosecutor probe the abuse by police officers during these national protests. And they also want to see the ESMAD riot police dismantled. These protests began 3 weeks ago in rejection to President Duque's economic policies, corruption, and failures in implementing peace over his 15-month term.
We have difficulties that make us not have a decent life, and because of that, we as a people are making a cry of protest, in order to reach tangible agreements that really benefit the Colombian population.
No more. Enough. We want Duque's government to negotiate or leave, because people are already tired of so many lies, of so many deceptions, so much injustice and corruption.
And by evening, there was repression reported in the area of the National University of Colombia in Bogotá, where students were taken by the SMAT police.
Nombre y cédula, muchacho. Jonathan David Ramos. 590-111. Otra vez, número de cédula. 026-590-111.
Demonstrations on Tuesday in Santiago de Chile marked Human Rights Day. Police deployed tear gas, but protesters are saying this method is repressive and dangerous, as some demonstrators have received serious injuries from impact. One of those impacted was a 15-year-old girl who was hit during Tuesday's protests. She was operated and is in critical condition. A march of people carrying cardboard eyes shed light on the 352 Chileans who have lost partial or total vision as a result of police repression. At the start of a new week of anti-government mobilizations in Chile, social organizations occupied Santiago's downtown to demand answers to requests that were sent weeks ago to President Sebastián Piñera.
On Monday, Chilean senators put a stop to punitive measures by the government, which sought to punish those who participate on social protests. For lawmakers, the project was poorly formulated and its sanctions too high.
We reject the entire first article of the so-called anti-looting law. Because it criminalizes social protests, it criminalizes the Mapuche people and their struggle. The article is evil.
In the morning, social organizations set up tents in a public square in Santiago. If the law in question were to be approved, such actions could be severely punished.
Right now, the main stage is being set up, a place for public debate, so that Chilean citizens can come and give their opinion and discuss and build the new country we want.
We have come to defend our sovereignty, to demand to be heard and to get answers. We're calling on all workers to keep on mobilizing and to take our demands to all public spaces.
They demand justice, reparations, and also want to take part in the process of drafting a new constitution that includes reforms to the pensions and healthcare systems, as well as an increase to the minimum wage.
It's not just these 50 days. Social organizations have been asking for this a long time. In this country, there is no real democracy because there are no social rights.
I think it's very serious when you see a government that, instead of promoting laws to improve social conditions, criminalizes its own people, and at the same time it keeps systematically violating our human rights.
Protesters say these mobilizations will go on indefinitely until the government meets their demands.
We have more stories coming up. Don't go away.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomen. Monday, only on Telesur.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Mexico, Canada, and the United States signed a new North American trade agreement in Mexico City on Tuesday. It allegedly supports labor rights, but still requires domestic approval in the United States House of Representatives.
We have a great interest in this deal having the support of US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and for the deal to be approved by different political factions in the US. Some being against it, the impeachment and its effects, and if President Trump wants a medal for the deal. This is what the markets were concerned about. The media, and us too. That's what's important. And if the deal is ratified in 2 months or 2 weeks, that's not what matters here.
The Mexican government announced it has managed to stop the drop in oil production, as well as the discovery of a new oil field in the southeast of the country. Let's take a closer look.
The head of Mexican state oil company, Pemex, announced that the nation has managed to revert the drop in oil production that had been ongoing during previous administrations. They hope to close out the year with a rebound.
In December, new oil fields will start production. You may remember we had said that 20 new fields were ready to be exploited.
According to official data, by January of 2019, production stood at 1,625,000 barrels per day, the lowest production in 20 years. But over the past 12 months, production increased by 100,000 barrels per day. According to the president, this is a result of stopping privatization.
Over the last few years of the neoliberal rule, public investment was going to oil fields in the north and in the deep sea, where there's either no oil or extraction proves too expensive. Investment in the southeast and in shallow waters, where oil is present, was insufficient.
During a recent trip to the state of Tabasco, the president was informed about the discovery of an oil field holding up to 500 million barrels of oil. The discovery was made close to where a new refinery is being built.
We will produce gasoline, something we haven't done in the last 40 years. Previous governments would only sell crude oil.
With this discovery, the current government hopes to increase their proven oil reserves. Also, among the natural resources they hope to exploit is lithium.
They say we could have the world's largest lithium deposit. But it all depends on worldwide lithium production, because one thing is to have the biggest deposit and another is to be the largest producer.
The first information provided by the Undersecretary of Mining about the Vaca de Huachi deposit in the state of Sonora said it is not yet clear how large the lithium reserves are, but initial production could reach over 17,000 tons.
Venezuela is among the many nations which participated in the United Nations Conference on Climate Change, COP25. The delegation was headed by Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza.
Professor Karl Marx had already warned of it. Back in 1992, the commander-president, Fidel Castro, said that there was an endangered species, and that species was the human one. We can say 27 years later that the human species is still in danger of extinction. Allow me also to recall the words that Commander Hugo Chavez took from the streets of Denmark in the demonstrations against the Conference on Climate Change 10 years ago. And although they tried to not give the floor to him, or the worthy President Evo Morales of Bolivia, Hugo Chavez said, "Let's not change the climate, let's change the system, and consequently begin to save the planet." For Venezuela, it is fundamental that the international community renew its commitment to multilateralism and international law in all areas, especially in the climate area. But we shouldn't talk about a climate crisis, but rather of an emergency. We should call it by its name, which is almost a catastrophe, and we need to stop it immediately.
Also speaking at the COP25 conference, Barbados reflected on the catastrophic damage caused by hurricanes on Caribbean countries over the years, most recently in the Bahamas.
The government intends to enhance the resilience of low and middle income households to extreme weather events. In concert with these adaptation measures, and despite being only a minimal contribution to the global greenhouse gas emissions, the government of Barbados remains committed to doing its fair share to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, as articulated in the Barbados National Energy Policy, we will seek to transform Barbados from a petroleum-based economy to a first green 100% renewable energy and carbon-neutral island state by the year 2030.
Antigua and Barbuda's Foreign Affairs Minister E.P. Chet Green has denounced the blockade imposed on Cuba by the United States as he observed CARICOM Cuba Day. Monday marked 47 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between CARICOM member states and the Republic of Cuba. In a small ceremony held on Friday, Green said, "We CARICOM countries continue to reiterate our call for an end to the economic, commercial and financial blockade imposed by the U.S. government against Cuba. We condemn the current U.S. administration's decision to tighten sanctions against our Caribbean sister island of Cuba." UNICEF has released a report saying that more than 750,000 children have been displaced by storms and flooding across the Caribbean in the last 4 years. This is a six-fold increase compared to the 175,000 in the preceding period from 2009 to 2013. UNICEF's Child Alert series, Children Uprooted in the Caribbean, found that the primary cause was a series of catastrophic tropical cyclones or hurricanes that hit the region between 2016 and 2018. Trinidad and Tobago is moving to demonetize its $100 bill by December 31st, replacing it with a polymer note. This has led to long lines at banks across the island since nationals are scampering to make the changes within 14 days. Some businesses have already stopped accepting the old note. The decision came after the government determined that the previous $100 bill had been used in illegal activities, including money laundering, counterfeiting, and drug deals. We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dotting the I. Saturdays, only on Telesur.
Thank you for joining us again. The African Forum on Peace and Security has started in Egypt. African leaders met in the city of Aswan for the official opening of the two-day forum, focusing on sustainable peace, security and development in the African continent. The forum will also discuss post-conflict reconstruction, education, climate change, and sustainable development issues on the continent. Protesters have marched in central Algiers to demand cancellation of presidential elections planned for Thursday. The protesters threatened to boycott voting and demanded that the vote be cancelled until the entire ruling elite stepped down and the military quit politics. The 5 approved candidates running on Thursday are former senior officials linked to the former Algerian president Abdelaziz Bouteflika.
We do not want this vote. This is a charade. It is targeting the ignorant. Those who go to vote are ignorant and do not love their country. Those who vote do not love their country.
At least 5 people have been killed in a militant attack on a hotel in Somalia. 5 heavily armed gunmen are reported to have stormed the SYL hotel and opened fire, killing 5 people and injuring 11 more. The security forces killed all the 5 attackers. Al-Shabaab fighters claim responsibility for this attack.
So after the sunset and Maghrib prayers, gunmen attacked the hotel and then jumped off the walls. Now we thank to Allah that we finally survived.
The Bougainvillean people have overwhelmingly voted for independence from Papua New Guinea. That referendum result on Bougainville's independence will trigger separation negotiations between the 2 governments. The historic election victory in the South Pacific Islands is expected to bring recovery from a brutal civil war between Bougainville rebels and Papua New Guinea security forces that left up to 20,000 people dead.
I think the current success of the referendum has clearly demonstrated that the people of Bougainville, by this successful outcome, now feel that they are psychologically liberated.
In France, the transport strike is on day 7, with unionized workers saying they'll fight to the end. The government will unveil the details of a pension reform plan today, which has spurred a week of protest in response. The country's 42 pension schemes are expected to be merged into one, infuriating unions whose members think better pension provisions are being scrapped. Public transport in Paris and the national rail has been severely affected, as well as some flights.
Don't be fooled. There will be announcements. And I have said this at another General Assembly meeting this morning. There will be announcements on Wednesday. They will try to divide us. Keep that in your mind. We are fighting until the end. Until the end.
And large mobilizations which took place on Tuesday were met by police repression, including this one in Nantes, where thousands took to the streets. Police deployed tear gas to disperse large crowds, even launching it at high school students who joined the demonstrations.
We want a complete withdrawal of the pension reform plan, because this plan is very nefarious for workers and for young people who will one day retire. We had to fight hard to get our current pension system. Our ancestors achieved this conquest, and so we want to conserve it.
It's the final day of campaigning in Britain ahead of Thursday's general election, and leaders were all seen making the most out of these final hours. Opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn began the day campaigning in Glasgow, where he told supporters that votes from the Scottish Labour Party would be crucial for a Labour victory. SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon met with voters in Edinburgh South, and Prime Minister Boris Johnson, that we see there, made pie in Derbyshire. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, spoke with British actress Maxine Peake, who says it is critical to vote Labour on Thursday in order to achieve a just society.
It really is make or break now, I think. If we don't get the Labour Party in and Jeremy as leader, then I dread to think what is ahead for us as a nation. The bullying, the disrespect, the systematic sort of grinding down of the working class. I mean, we say the working class, but the Tories within, you know, with a sort of manifesto have created now, an under-working class, you know what I mean? The class system has fractured into 1,000 pieces. So, we need hope to put back in this country again. it's not about, I'm not into all this let's make Britain great again. It's just about let's have a fair and just society that everybody can be involved in.
And we leave you with a tune by UK hip-hop artist and activist Loki on this election, which takes place tomorrow.
December 12th, change the world. Sell the NHS, that's what Boris wants. He doesn't even have to lie, they just fob it off. They haven't got the honesty, but they got the bots. Policies that kill, they're not telling you the proper cost. More corporate violence, that's what Boris wants. Contracts for affairs, relationship was on and off. The robber boss won't even cover what your coffin costs. Policies that kill, we can't bring back what was lost. There's murdering, there's murmuring, there's churning grins harmful. Interrogating several ways a journalist can't do. Liar in the booth, a million examples. As trustworthy as the BBC is impartial.
We'll keep an eye on that election as well. With that, we end our news brief. But you can read all of our stories by checking our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to also join us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.